Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Talking Bollocks, brought to you by Reefy as Fuck. First of all, I want to make an apology. Last week, I forgot to mention one of our members, Rob's YouTube channel. He was kind enough to give this Discord a shout out, so I want to give his YouTube channel a shout out. So it's Pelagic Swimmer on YouTube, and he's got an incredible tank. You can see his tour on our YouTube channel as well, so just check that out. So it's Pelagic Swimmer.
And he's got an Instagram.
Does he? I wouldn't know. I'm a loser. Instagram. Oh,
yeah,
Jason
cool
appeared there.
Stuff. Cool stuff. Except for all the dead coral he's seen. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, that's the sea temperatures he's talking about. Fucking hell.
Like bathwater.
Yeah. Actually, that's mental.
Jim,
if we had Carl here, he could do the conversion.
Am I what?
Are you guys right side by side right now in the same room?
I filmed this ahead of time, and then I let him sit, and this is just like a AI
right.
He's got a banging tank.
Skynet strikes again.
The only thing is,
not an Achilles tag, but
when my camera wasn't working, I went into camera settings to see what the fuck was going on and had the background. I'm like, oh, I got Ron's background. I'll put it on. Still couldn't get the camera to work, but the background stuck.
Why wouldn't you?
So today's episode is about fails in reefing. So I always go first, so I'm not taking a first punt this time. So I'm going to go up the top left of my screen, and we're going to start there. Jason, what is your biggest fail in reefing?
Fucking everything. I mean, you know,
if
a lot of fails mixed in with a little bit of success. The success is this, the fails.
So you don't have one particular one,
but I do have one major fail, and most of you guys already know when I cooked the tank, at completely my own fault, just because I'm stupid. But for anybody that doesn't know, I came home from work. The tank was at like 93 degrees.
Yeah.
We had
soup's ready.
We had a power outage that day for a couple of minutes. Yeah, it smelled really bad. It's horrible. Power outage, I was using hang on the back equipment, and one hang on the back filter didn't come back on, and the temp probe for the heater was in that hang on the back. Don't do that. Anybody listening, don't do that. It's stupid. You will fuck shit up. So yeah, I lost basically everything except for Zellas and Pallies, because you can't kill those fucking things. And a fighting conch survived it, no problem. Didn't even I don't even think he batted an eye. Like, he was just like, whatever, more shit for me to eat.
I wonder if the things that can live in tide pools and get into those areas that get really hot during the day because of tide, can survive those catastrophes. But
yeah, I mean, the Zoas and the Pallies did fine. I also ended up having mushrooms grow back from like a tiny, barely a colored dot, the size of the end of a pencil. They came back, and then they just randomly vanished a couple of months ago. So I don't know what the hell that was about, but.
So like a stress event, and they decided to
they
throw a Hail Mary to keep living.
Yeah, I mean, they held on for a while, and then just randomly everything else was doing fine, and they disappeared. So whatever. I mean, it is what it is, I suppose.
And this is my ignorance, but I understand the temperature swing thing with like the tide pool critters, but in the water, when it gets real hot, don't people say that the oxygen content, the dissolved oxygen, goes way down?
Yeah, that's what I've always heard.
So just curious if being in 90-degree air is different than 90-degree water.
Is the conch still alive?
Yes.
Okay, so let's call him Jean Conch Van Damme.
Nice.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, he's cruising around in the new tank now. Just happy as anything.
That's interesting because normally I find like my snails and my crabs. I don't have crabs anymore. I haven't had them for years, but they're one of the first things to kick the bucket when things go crazy.
Oh, and for no sometimes just for no reason, they'll just randomly just kick off. You have them for a month or 3 years and poof, gone. Not that conch. He's tough.
It's interesting
yeah.
that you eventually lost those mushrooms though, because I had a massive temperature issue years ago when a member of staff took a rock out and knocked the temperature probe out down the back of the tank, cooked the tank. The only thing that survived was some pallies and some zoas and a couple other wee bits and pieces. But then over like the course of 2-3 months, slowly but surely everything completely died and I lost everything.
Yeah, I actually lost those mushrooms and they came back and looked like they were doing really well. And then just randomly started shrinking up and then were just gone. Also a rock flower. There was a rock flower in that tank that I thought was going to die immediately. It lived up until I moved tanks. When I changed tanks, it was not happy for whatever reason. As soon as it hit the new tank, it moved itself around, like floated all over the place, and then just that was it. It was over.
That's crazy that a certain stress event can make something wither a wee bit but survive, and then it takes something you think is not that big a deal and it's off.
Yeah. Stupid fucking hobby.
Yeah. Out of interest, how many people here have had a temperature issue during the course of reefing? So I have, and obviously Jason has. Brandon has.
I have.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep. Can just hear you, Jason.
Oh, right on. Okay.
You've had a temperature issue?
Oh, yeah, a long time ago. I just when I got into reefing back in the 90s, this is going to show I had a power outage from a hurricane for up to 7 days, and the tank got up to about 91, 92. The only thing survived was a few dams and mushrooms.
Okay, so that's 4 people out of 9 have had temperature issues. Zach, you have?
Yeah, just like Jason, heater exploded.
Ooh.
Well, no, not just like Jason. I guess did yours explode, Jason, or is it just cooked?
No, just a power outage. We had no power, and I was relying off just air pumps for about 3 days.
Mine was just it just turned on and didn't turn off because the temp probe was out of water.
Yeah.
So it just
gotcha.
Yeah. I had that too, but I caught it just in the nick of time. But like the titanium heater I had by then was kind of cooked. Nothing died, luckily, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean temperature is one of the easiest things to screw up, I think. You know?
Yes.
You can screw up temperature like yes. But I mean, if you screw up salinity like for a minute, everything will probably be okay. But if you turn the heater on and it doesn't turn off, most everything's going to die. I mean, the fish especially.
Quality across heaters I've found in this hobby to be atrocious.
Shit, really absolute bad. Shit.
I don't know what some of these companies are doing to calibrate these things or set them up, but nah, I don't see why it's allowed in this hobby. You wouldn't go to a petrol pump and it gives you an extra litre of petrol by accident, would it?
No. No, but I think it's screwed up. It's speaking of that with heaters in general. Okay, BRS brings out their titanium heaters, right? So this is a product that they have sourced, had produced, labeled, and or warranting, and even they're saying from day one you should replace those every year.
Did they not?
Even though they have
put their
even though they have a 3-year warranty on them.
Did they not rush the production on them from Shego themselves? They pushed.
I hear that the 600 watt ones or the bigger ones had a lot of problems. Is what I've heard. The smaller ones weren't as problematic, from what I understand. but the
Yeah.
big ones, like the 3 or the 5 or 600 watt ones, the big ones, they had a lot of issues with those.
I'm running a
So
3
Jeff,
right now,
you're running what?
But even
Sorry.
a 300
Sorry.
watt, and it is doing okay. But knock on wood, anything can go sideways.
do you have a backup?
No. I have like smaller heaters, but the thing is, it's kind of like what you guys are saying. I can buy smaller heaters or backups, but like if I'm not buying the same titanium heater, the quality is shit. It's like these freshwater tank glass heaters with and I'm like, if I tink that off the side of my sump one time, it's gonna explode in there, and then I've got copper in the system. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. So I need a
Yeah,
good
I hear that.
alternative to a BRS titanium heater is what I need.
I
mean,
had
the
a
BRS
BRS, and
I have one, and it seems
Yeah.
to be okay. I was using a Higer before this, and but I had great luck with it. The thing still works fine. It's in my salt mixing bucket.
right.
So
I've got two
Yeah, I think that's
10-year-old Shagos in the shop tank,
Yeah.
500 watts, that are
uh,
running fine. 10 years old.
do you
That's
get
amazing.
the difference is the Shagos that you get and the Shagos that we get are two different things.
Yeah.
Apparently what you get over there, because that's, I guess you're on native voltage over there and all of that. So,
Yes.
you know,
That's,
So what-
that's my understanding.
Go ahead, Zach.
No, it's Jeff. Jeff has given us a lesson about this. He had mentioned that at least the folklore behind it was the native voltage makes a difference. The native voltage for Ron over there, the 220 or whatever it is what they're designed to work on, especially being a
Right.
German product. The one we get over here, the conversion, something about it fucks it up. And being on 120 or something like that, like they're not as bulletproof long term. Like if you talk to NSB Mac, he's used one from BRS, and he's had to like return it or get it exchanged every year for like the last couple of years I've known him. So
Like, what's going on though? Is it like failing off? Is it failing on? Are they melting? Like what?
so
I mean, they don't have-
Yeah,
certain-
the
They don't have
titanium's
an on-
melting.
they're only
it's like
on
just
off.
out of the Terminator 2 ending.
Nah.
Thumbs up.
No, I think it's circuitry, and I think it's failing off. I would have to talk to him. I haven't talked to him like specifics. Just knowing they're dying. They're not working right.
I mean, they would have to be failing that they won't produce heat anymore. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you wouldn't know, because the Inkbird or your Hydros or Apex or whatever you have controlling it, because there's no thermostat in those heaters.
Yeah.
So it would have to be failing where it won't produce heat anymore.
Yeah, I think what
So, I mean,
Taters was saying.
worry
it's
about more about
liquid
the-
poly alloy.
Ron does an accent. Alloy. Oh no.
A liquid poly alloy.
and that could be one of your biggest fails.
Yeah.
Yes, but can you say aluminum, Ron?
Aluminum.
Oh,
There you go.
yeah.
That's a when.
He really has to think about it, though.
Like Arnie.
I still remember
when
the first American
Ron-
person I ever met, right? And he was right into cars. I remember him talking about cars, and he just kept saying all this stuff, and I couldn't make sense of anything he was saying. He was talking about carburetors and blah, blah, blah. And then he said this one thing. He says, I love my motor cars. It goes like stink. I was like, what? It goes like what? Goes like stink. I was like, goes like stink. Stink as in smell.
What is it?
You don't have a
To have
car
a
that goes like
three-quarter hot cam.
stink?
That's the kind of shit he would say.
Son of a bitch, do nothing but run.
Yeah, apparently it went like stink anyway. So, yeah, I'm now next on my screen, so I'll go. And mine's
What's
really
a
boring.
stank?
Stank.
What's a stank? You
Thank
didn't
you.
finish.
Right.
Goes like stink, STINK. I assume that's what he meant. Or was it stank? You guys tell me. What does it mean? I assume
Maybe he was doing the stanky leg.
Stank, like it smells.
Well, smell travels pretty fast, so
You guys are the car guy.
In Scotland, we don't say that. We say goes like fuck. Fast as fuck. Let's shut off a shovel.
Petrol.
This is fuck. We
We just call it fucking gas.
Fucking gas. Fucking gas could mean two things. Anyway,
Fucking gas.
my biggest fail, and it's a really boring one, is failing to quarantine. I played roulette for years in the hobby, and I have to say, I got by absolutely perfectly. I put one dirty fish in my tank, which was a Regal Angel, and it cost me a fortune, and it killed everything with velvet. Now, what I will say is, I have a really strange relationship with quarantine, and that is, I have killed way more fish in quarantine than I have not quarantining fish and not getting lucky. So, I lost all my fish due to a velvet outbreak because I didn't quarantine. I then spent years quarantining, which I still do, and I have lost way more fish in the quarantine process than I have throwing the dice and throwing a fish in my tank. I am in no way saying anybody should not quarantine. Quarantine is definitely the way to do it, but I think you need to have a really good quarantine system. A tiny little system that you set up overnight because you chose to buy a fucking fish on a whim is not a proper quarantine system. It needs to have biological filtration. It needs to have plenty of hiding spaces. You need to have medication on hand. All of the above. I've had nothing but car crashes doing it any other way.
That's exactly why I don't quarantine.
And I totally respect that. I get that.
I always kind of figured that was the whole, like, I'm going to throw a tank together in 2 minutes with some fresh water in it, some fresh salt water in it, and throw this fish in there, and then I'm going to expect it to live while it's going through whatever medications you put it through. Quarantining is good. Don't get me wrong. But like, if you can't do it properly, you might as well just roll the dice or don't call it quarantining. Call it, I don't know, call it something else, because that's not quarantining. That's just having a look at it,
Booking it into a motel.
It's
that's so hard too.
All those prophylactic treatments, can't be easy on the fish with it being
Zach,
a tiny tank and living in a PVC elbow.
Zach's doing full quarantine at the store now. I never asked him, like, he was a really big advocate of the using buckets and doing a tank transfer method, but now he's doing copper and running a whole bigger quarantine, I think, correct? It's a shame he's not here today.
Yeah. I think they're isolated tanks though. Like, he's got maybe a few in each little tank. But I think it's all medicated.
Yeah, it's not tank transfer anymore, which is what he had success doing before.
I just wonder at like what volume can you do a tank transfer method successfully with the staff that he has, which is like him and his girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you could fuck up the tank transfer method pretty easy. And that whole deal to me seemed very, it's a lot, and you can screw it up.
It's not
if you do it.
It's not,
if you do it,
no,
right,
it's too much for me.
It's a good method, but like even thinking about like the hurry up and set it up and go with no real biological filtration, like that is so hard to do correctly, because you basically need to do like twice a day water changes. You have to, but then to do twice a day water changes and keep the water medicated properly, impossible.
No way.
It's so hard.
If you're doing twice a day water changes, you don't need biological filtration. You're pulling that ammonia out. Like,
right. You don't need the biological filtration.
Right.
But you need to keep the medication
right
consistent.
Yeah, and the ammonia out of the water.
Yeah.
Yep, keeping your copper levels steady. Oh fucking hell! It's
Yeah.
it's a whole other level of the hobby. People are
Yeah.
like, oh, you've got a 10-foot reef tank. You know, have you set up a quarantine? I'll tell you something. The reef tank's probably fucking easier.
Yeah,
Okay,
it probably
so
is.
Ron, I guess I have like a devil's advocate question for you. Do you think that none of your fish currently, like, sorry, I'll back up a bit. Do you treat everything with copper and
Nope,
medication?
nope. I
Okay,
treat
so do
nothing
you,
unless it shows signs of something.
right, but you still quarantine them for observation,
Yes,
and you've had success with that.
almost 100%. I
Right.
would say in the last 2-3 years.
So, like, is there
Other than
something to
copper bands.
is there something to be said just about like giving them like a grace period from stress from transport to landing in your tank? Because like obviously had that Regal, for example, had a 20-gallon tank to cool down in for 2, 3 weeks, and then you threw it in the display, like how the results could have been different, and still had Velvet just dormant because it wasn't compromised by stress. Like
Yep.
you don't need to throw copper at it per se to have success. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying like prophylactically, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know.
I'm not a fan of putting fish and animals into copper solutions if they have absolutely no need for it.
Well, you don't come out of the womb and get fed penicillin. Like they wait for you to get sick and then you take it. Like, I don't know.
I've had the same success going, Ron. And this we could get into the weeds with talking about quarantine, right?
Of course.
But I agree with you that like I look at copper as like almost like chemo to the fish. Like
Yes.
you bring in everything close to death and
Right.
hoping that
Yeah.
the fish survives it. So like a long observation period, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, is really good to see if the fish and even it gets them some strength because they're going through hell being transported to our boxes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the way
Someplace
I
where
do
they
it.
don't
But
have
people
to
who do it,
don't have to
Go on.
compete for food.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I know, and it is a real shame that Zach Budnick from Great Lakes Corals could not be here today because he's dealing with hundreds of fish all at one time. And it is his wages that is paying his mortgage. That's different.
Yeah.
That is
Well,
different.
and it's got to be like pretty much idiot proof. He's got to sell it to some guy walking in and then goes home and throws it in his tank and then comes back and says, "Your fish gave me Velvet." Well, yeah, at that point, like you've got to have a good protocol to kind of eradicate anything.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah, Zach's got
it's
to be
got to
like
be
janitor at the. I was gonna say Zach's got to be like the janitor at your the mall where you got to go in there and clean the bathroom every couple hours after somebody's used it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
We do that here.
It's a
So,
constant job.
Yeah. So we could just talk about quarantine forever. And to be honest, it maybe is a good idea to do a show on quarantine and talk about how everybody does it. Who knows? Anyway, next on the faces on my screen is Jordan. What is your biggest fail other than not buying citric acid?
It's a good one, actually. So fortunately,
Not buying brute trash cans either.
yeah, I'm working on that one, and I'm working on the citric actually. So hopefully one day I'll have both. Knock on wood, my biggest fails haven't actually cost me any animals. Didn't like nuke any tank or anything. Again, like that could fucking happen tonight for all I know. But when I was setting up my first reef tank, I, like most people, probably watched like the 52 weeks of reefing from BRS and, kind of drank the Kool-Aid of like, these are all these products that you need for your tank, right? And I think the main thing that got me was plumbing. Like, I am not a fucking handy guy. I'm not like, I went to university, I studied animals, but asked me to roof a fucking house and I have no idea what I'm doing. So Plumbing was all brand new to me, and I drank the Kool-Aid about like fit as many unions as you can and get the ball valves on each plumbing, like on each line and everything like that. And I spent probably like $400 on, schedule 80 fittings and the 40 pipe and all that stuff. And
It's a lot of loony.
I didn't fucking use any of it. I'm telling you, it was just more things to tighten to make sure they didn't leak every time. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like Ron level fucking anal and like take everything apart every month and clean it. I had that tank set up for like a year and I cleaned it probably one time. Like, so setting up the new tank.
Ron just took it. He took it well. Ron took that well.
I fully fucking admit it. I know I'm not normal. I know I am not normal. It's fine.
But like, if you guys go back and watch my tank tour and you look at the plumbing, I look at it now and I cringe a little bit because I'm like, oh, I did not need all of that bullshit there, So biggest fail for me for sure is plumbing my first tank, but you live and learn.
I think a lot of people here. I mean, I was in the hobby before BRS started doing their really big push on YouTube, but I still watched every video they made, and I still followed a lot of what they suggested. And I know Jim and I have spoken about this as well. He watched a few of them as well, and it's difficult to not get tempted to go, well, if WWC are doing it that way and they're producing hundreds of thousands of corals a year, then they're doing it right. So what salt are they using? Let's go there first. And then, so I started buying the Tropic Man and Pro Reef salt and all this. But I don't, it's definitely, and I know you're not saying you're ashamed of it, but it's definitely nothing to be ashamed of that I think a lot of people went down that road.
Right. Well, and I didn't know any better. And
the recipe makes it easier to jump into the hobby.
Yep.
Right. And buy their products and buy shit that you don't need.
Obviously, I didn't. That's the difference. But I was buying products they were suggesting, but not through BRS.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, me too.
I can't imagine. I actually can't imagine trying to plumb your first tank when you, Jordan, not a handy guy, no experience plumbing anything.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy, so I can't even imagine what it's like for somebody like you who's just has never done any of that before. Like that's tough.
It took me like a week to figure out what a bushing was.
Right?
I couldn't figure out the word for what I was looking for. I'm like, I needed to convert a 1 inch to a 3/4, and I'm looking at all of these like, where it's fatter and then it goes skinnier, and I just go to the guy at Home Depot and he's like, oh yeah, you want this? And he hands me this like little ring and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how's that going to work? He's like, you put that in and it goes in the other way. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, but who's like, where does it say that on Google? Like, how do I Google this shit? You know what I mean? Like nobody.
Oh no, that's just experience. That's all stuff you have to learn.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that knowledge to begin with, like it's hard. Of course, Ron's got a plumbing catalog.
Yeah, because I'm constantly having to educate myself on this. See, even electrical work, I've kind of got my head around a wee bit of it. See, plumbing sizes, fuck me. I buy 60 things on Amazon to get one right and return the other 59. That's the world I live in.
We're kind of lucky here. I mean, we just go to the fucking hardware store, Home Depot or Lowe's, and fucking put it all together at the store and be like, yeah, that'll work. Take it home and be done.
You carrying a bucket of shit out of there, like all these fittings. Yeah.
And making sure they don't think the 10 that you brought with you are when you need to buy. Like
these are mine. These are mine.
These are the ones that came to make sure.
I brought the butt plug with me.
Yeah, but Jim, that's only if you're fine with having.
I knew we were going to get the Dahmer and butt plugs. We got the Dahmer in the middle, butt plugs in the middle,
popcorn buckets.
But Jim, that only works if you're okay with white plumbing. If you want fancy colors and all of that nonsense, you're ordering all that crap online.
Yeah.
It's like buying a pair of shoes, though. If I want a pair of shoes, I go to the fucking sporting goods place, try them on, and say, yeah, that size works. Say, sorry, I don't want them. See you later. And then I go on Amazon and I buy them for fucking on sale. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Same
I do that
thing.
too.
So
I do
this
the
time
same
around,
thing.
the only thing I ordered was like a gate valve for my main like drain line. Everything else I bought at Home Depot. I probably spent like $80. Like it was like all in with all the fittings. Oh, and the bulkheads. They don't have ABS bulkheads in store here for
Yeah.
some reason. So
They don't have them here either.
yeah,
No. You gotta go to the
Not where I
LFS
live, at
has them.
least.
yeah.
My
Yeah.
LFS has tons of bulkheads, so I can go there for them.
Oh yeah. No, I had to order mine. My LFS doesn't stock anything like that.
We've got fuck all of that here. We've got a big hardware store called B&Q, and you go into the plumbing line and there's like 600 little buckets that you put your hand in, and everyone's just fucked them all up and put one from there and there and one from there and there, and it's just like,
Here too.
fuck's sake. And then you ask a member of staff and they go,
I've been really lucky.
What's it called? The bean queue?
B&Q.
B and Q.
Oh, okay. That was the bean queue.
No.
That would be a weird name.
And then you ask a member of staff, and then they go, and then you
I
go,
go,
can you get me somebody else who can help?
Can somebody please help in the plumbing line? It's a man looking for plumbing in the plumbing. That's tea break.
And you're left to just fuck around on your
Tea
own.
break. What the fuck? Tea break. Fucking tea break.
And then you wait for half
B&Q.
an hour and nobody turns up.
They're having some fucking some digestives while they're having tea. They fucking got sick. Had to go to the bathroom. Went right through you. Some strong shit.
How
Coffee
long you
enemas.
been waiting? How long you been waiting to use that filter on the mic there, Ron? That was brilliant.
A little long.
Anyway, there I am.
A
still
little
waiting.
long.
I'm
That's
still-
a good one.
Still waiting to talk to somebody in this fucking plumbing aisle, and eventually this like 95-year-old man, because they employ really old people. It must be a company policy, and he's limping up the aisle to see me, and he just starts doing this with bits of plumbing. And then he looks at it and says, I've never seen one of them before. That's it. My options are fucked. So I then come home and I go into this catalogue and order 60 items. And out of those 60 items, one of them might be right. Anyway.
Well, how many sizes of plumbing do you have over there, Ron? Because you use that weird metric bullshit over there. So
Yeah, so we've got metric, we've got imperial, which is inches, but then there's another one. Let me see. So this is all color coordinated to the sizes.
colors.
And then there's pressure ratings and oh fucking hell. Anyway, next on the list, coming down the screen, is taters. And by the way, before I ask you what your biggest fail is, taters, I explained your name to a member of staff today, and he was wheezing so much, I think he struggled to eat his lunch. Anyway, what is your biggest fail in reefing?
Definitely myself. Thinking I'm better at this than I am. So two instances, I've killed a bunch of stuff through my own fault. One was a tank move, upgrade to a larger tank, and bunch of new dry rock, and I thought I'd help push things along with some biological miracle in a bottle, Oopsie daisy, corals didn't like all that algaecide I kept feeding them. Things started looking worse. Better add another dab. A little more helpful bacteria can't hurt. So that was a way I killed a bunch of coral. And then another time I played around with ozone, worked great. The orb breeding on my controller was a little low, so I decided I'm going to swap a probe. It's an evening, eat dinner, go to bed, forget about it. Next day, go in the room with the tank. Smells like a freaking indoor pool in there. Female clown is looking really active. She's sporty. She's on a murder spree.
Oh no.
Other stuff is like gasping for air, and she's like supercharged, like out up to 11, just ready to kill everything with all that. So, the cardinal fish hated it. They died. I killed a handful of fish from too much ozone. Once I swapped the probes over, the Milwaukee was like 600 something. It's like, oopsie daisy.
Yeah.
So if you swap
Oops.
a probe, calibrate it.
Yeah, 100%. I have done exactly that with ozone as well. I only lost one fish, thankfully, but it was a biota yellow tang that I spent ages waiting for and paid a lot of money for, and it was the only thing that died, and it was ORP. But yeah.
Yeah, so I don't worry about that anymore. Ozone was fine. I dialed it way back. I got way smarter about using it, but it was just one more thing to deal with, so passed it along. Just kind of dumbed my system back down, made it simpler, less autopilot, more, okay, I'm just going to use the UV and get back to doing water changes and let things work themselves out instead of trying to fix stuff all the time.
Amen.
Yep, absolutely. I run UV now, but in very, very small amounts for like half an hour at night when there's nobody else around, and I keep the ORP slightly lower as well now. It's just not worth the risk. So even if it does slowly creep up, it will get caught eventually by the apex.
I think you may have said UV, but
sorry,
you mean
ozone.
Yeah, I know you mean ozone, but with UV, my return goes through it 24/7. 100% of the water through the return pump goes through it. If nothing else, I like the water clarity. Don't know if it's preventing any issues, but the water clarity, it's like the first time you saw a high def TV.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. So moving on down the screen, next is Brandon.
Hello. Yeah. It's kind of hard to pinpoint just one. Kind of like the nano tanks I run, it's been little mistakes, some bigger than others here and there. So it's your ATO starts, back siphoning, and you wake up and your, salinity is crashed, or your heater probe falls out. So your wife starts smelling, what is this burning metallic kind of smell? Or your fish tanks in the same room as your 3D printers, and maybe or maybe not, you flicked and cut something with your nippers off a resin print that may or may not have entered the tank. I honestly don't know if that's what happened, but those tanks are no longer up and running. I didn't lose everything, but I lost a good chunk of like anemones and stuff like that, like the rock flowers. I even lost a damsel, which is pretty crazy considering like I think those fish will still be here after like a nuclear holocaust. So it's been like a lot of small things here and there, and kind of like what Jordan was talking about. I am not a handyman like whatsoever, and maybe that's partially why I have the smaller tanks, because when I start thinking about plumbing, I'm just like, oh man, it's kind of a clusterfuck, So I don't know. I'm gonna get there. Hopefully,
it doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
And the prepackaged options like Red Sea or Waterbox, you can connect that stuff, and that's like you'll learn something from doing the pre-assembled kit stuff, and then you'll feel more confident about doing it all the way from scratch.
Cool. If I have
like
my
trial
ass
by
crack
fire.
going, will that give me like more like knowledge and perception, like if I'm doing the plumbing?
Well, our viewership
Brandon,
will skyrocket.
You actually have something that a lot of other people don't have, though. You have all of us.
That's true.
You lucky fucker.
You
I am
lucky bastard.
Very lucky. Very lucky. You can't learn about tanks and dick jokes, in one-stop shop there. I mean,
some might say it's a curse more than a blessing.
Where have all those places gone? Like, it's just a sad world. Used to be able to every corner.
I know, man. It's I don't know what to say.
So just for the record, Brandon, you're saying that you've had multiple little fails.
Yes.
Along the way. But
Yes.
you don't have one particular one that you would say is your biggest one.
If really I would have narrowed it down, it's probably one, going on vacation, and then two, like probably needing to do a better job at the whole 3D print tank room kind of thing. Just a lot of travel all at once. And I as I told you guys last week, I hate traveling. I get really nervous about my tanks because I've lost some shit. Yeah.
Just work 7 days, be miserable. It's fine. Everything's easier that way if you just accept misery.
I used to work that when I was in my residency many years ago. Is like, the best part about working 7 days is you don't have to transition from the weekend. You're just nonstop.
You're not sitting on a Sunday night going, oh.
If you never have a taste of freedom, you don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
I get sweaty thinking about going home early.
Yeah.
I'm going to see our terminally ill friend tomorrow, and I'm going to be away for 3 hours. See the amount of fucking effort I've had to put in to make sure that everyone's going to be okay while I'm away. Anyway, this isn't about me. Jimbo, what is your biggest fail?
I'm up.
You knew it was coming.
I knew. I was just waiting. When's he going to say my name? I have no idea what order this is. I honestly think my biggest fail is getting this deep into this hobby. I now hate fishing because I have relationships with fish. I don't feel trapped to my tank, but I feel like I can't really leave comfortably without worrying about it.
You're
Every time I walk down
Obligation.
into the basement, I worry that I'm going to see an entirely white tank and have killed everything. I feel more for climate change because of how bad things are with the reefs in the world, that I wouldn't be this deep into even worrying about them if I didn't have this reef tank. I see stuff like what Rob posted, and I see the pictures of thousands of fish swimming together, and I think somebody plucked one of those out, and it's in my tank. And I've basically put these fish in tank jail. So the morale of, of what I've done kind of it's a tough situation for me. Like, I try and give these fish the best I can, try and take care of the coral, but I don't know. I don't know if I should be doing it, So I'm in this conundrum, and it's kind of difficult. So I would say, getting into the hobby and then getting in this deep, I don't know if I should have done it. I mean, didn't Scotty say, Ron, didn't you say, Scott, you talked to Scotty and he's kind of in the same boat? Like, I don't know if I'd get back into it. Like, I don't know if it's right.
Yeah, I was speaking to Scotty this morning, by the way. So that's him. That's him moved into his new house. Stunning, absolutely stunning. He's doing really well. He's super happy. But yeah, that was one of the reasons he got parasitic copepods that I think was the nail in the coffin, which all of the treatments and the care for it and all the rest. And then he was going to move house and things like that, and life took a bit of a turn. But yeah, the actual morality of the animals being in Australia, I think, with what's going on with the barrier reef and things like that, it's maybe a little bit closer to home.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
in Australia, the captive bred, the aquaculture market isn't as big as it is here. And the captive bred stuff removes a lot of the guilt I feel about keeping fish as pets.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I would agree. And that makes me feel better, like moving towards doing things in a more, in a better way for the animals and not removing them from the ocean. And I guess like everybody has pets and dogs and cats or whatever. So, turning fish into domesticated like animals, I guess that's kind of, it's okay. They got it. They're okay living in our homes, but we can't ask them. But on the flip side, like, I don't want to say I'm turning vegetarian over this whole thing, but like my fish all have personalities. Every one of them has a personality. And like I can't go to the pond down the street and think about hooking a fish anymore and not feel bad. Like, what am I doing? I'm fucking putting a fucking knife through this thing's jaw and reeling it in as it tries to run away. And then, either throwing it back or saying, fuck it. Like, so I used to love fishing and I have a hard time with it now. So
Makes
I
sense.
don't know. As far as tanks go, like, yeah, I had some clove polyp coral take over a tank. Like Jordan said, shit can be right around the corner tonight. Everything could crash, but I haven't had a complete tank failure ever. So it's not like I've always had backups. I've been pretty good with my tanks, so I've never had anything like that. So I haven't had like a complete failure in my tank, but the morale side of it, I've this struggle.
I think the captive bred thing is absolutely incredible, and the biggest thing for me, and the biggest win for me for the captive bred thing, is how strong the fish are coming from these captive breeding programs. I spent almost a year trying to get a hold of this Achilles tang that's in this, and then the nerves of what it's going to bring in with it, and the costs involved, and what might actually happen to this stunning fish that has been plucked from the ocean. I totally agree with you. It's horrible.
I'm not saying that this justifies us pulling fish from the ocean and like potentially killing them, but the amount that our hobby takes from the oceans is like a drop in the bucket compared to like the industrial fishing industry.
Yeah.
So even like
But
just the locals in those places, they're like spearfishing yellow tangs daily and frying them up. And like ecologically, us taking them from there and putting them in our tanks, it's no fucking different than somebody spearfishing it, but like the volume is just not comparable. And I'm not saying it justifies, but
I have the same struggle with what you just said with recycling. Like, yeah, great. I can recycle a bottle, every time I drink a plastic bottle, or I can stop using one-time containers. But really, it's the same thing you're saying. The amount that the industrial fish, the amount that corporations are using and pushing, like an individual's not going to make a difference with recycling. It's the
insignificant.
corporations. Yeah.
Okay.
So like it's the same thing, but I still feel like I can do my part,
Yeah, I still feel like I have to add my drop to the bucket of water.
Yeah.
I feel like
yours,
in the whole
though,
scheme of things, the choice between doing nothing and doing something I feel is slightly better.
Right.
I know which way I'm going to go.
Proponent of captive bred. Like I love my yellow tang. I wish like my clowns are captive bred. Probably not my Tamini tang, but like I wish it was. I think that supporting those companies is like the future of our hobby, but you shouldn't like
And
lose sleep over your damselfish that they pulled from the ocean.
the last 2 or 3 tanks I've set up, I keep wanting to do 100% nothing from the ocean, but then I see something that I can't resist. And then once I break that seal, it's like, well, YOLO.
Yeah.
So Jim, I guess like what like you just want to like ride your tank out until it's just coral, all your fish have died of old age, and then you just maybe like sell those colonies wholesale or something like
Put a stick of dynamite in it.
well his
Get the
spear is
fork hook.
killing them, right? Like, and obviously if you give them to another hobbyist who's probably less responsible than you, that's probably a worse fate than them living in your basement. So
Yeah, I honestly think this is one of those things that I only think about because we've brought this up as, what's your biggest fail and where do you feel, this hobby's taking you with the biggest fail. And I will block that out and do what Russ said and buy a fish and be like, there's my next fish, and I will take care of it the best I can. Like, it's in this fish store. I will, okay, I will take this fish. I will take care of it. But because I'm at that level, I think I'm at a whole nother level of responsibility to the animals that I have. That I think people at a beginner level just kill another fish. I'm not
fresh
at that
meat
level.
for the grinder.
Like,
they take the
exactly.
monthly trip to the LFS to buy another 6 chromis. They just top
Right.
up once a month when they go to their water.
And they never learn. Like, I'm past that. Like, I'm way past it. Even at the beginning, that wasn't me. Like, if something bad happens, I'm learning why it happened, and I'm making sure it doesn't fucking happen. So I have a responsibility to the things I've purchased. Just like you don't buy a fucking puppy dog for your kids for Christmas and know you're not going to take care of it after fucking January 1st.
But there's still people who buy bunnies for Easter. There's still people who buy chicks for Easter, and there's still people who they don't care that they're fish. They're just consumables to them.
Right? Yeah, like, you've got that dog. It's your fucking responsibility if that dog runs away to go fucking find it, right? Like,
go find that.
Like Billy
Get
Madison.
your ass out there and find that fucking dog.
It's out there having the time of its life. Fucking
like, I feel like that's the same thing with the fish. That's the way I feel. They're not just they're not just a piece of meat.
I feel this way about corals. So you guys know about the problems I've been having with parasitic copal.
Right.
Recently. I feel exactly the same for my corals. I've bought them. They're under my care. I need to do the best I can to make sure they are happy and healthy. When I cut off a bit of coral that's dead or something like that, I don't just chuck it in the bin. I'm like, I wonder what happened to that, and how can I be better with that?
Bush.
Yeah, it's
bullshit.
Throw it in the bushes.
That's like you see videos of
coral chucking contest.
Yeah, when it comes into your house, it should be, or in your fish tank, becomes a family member.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a sentient being. Like, I feel, connected with it.
Yeah. Jordan, what were you going to say?
And then I hack it up and glue it to pieces of rock.
I make a fucking sign out of it.
I was joking about how Zach will just like pull a colony out of his tank and then just like put it on a shelf somewhere and just like let it die slowly. But no, seriously though, Jim, like losing sleep over going down in the basement and just finding a whiteout tank, like I'm not even 2 years into this hobby and I've lost a lot of sleep, or like just wake up in the middle of the night, spring out of bed, go look at the tank, make sure nothing's like coral soup. And I've done that for a long time, and only until recently where I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that happens? Everything dies. I still have all my equipment. It's a fresh start. And yeah, it would be devastating. And I would probably need a lot of time to recoup from that. But like at the very worst case scenario, it's like a fresh start on my reef tank. I still have all my gear. It would suck, but like I could do it again if I had to. And I don't want to,
Insert the
everything's dead.
Goopy, I'll fucking do it again, me.
Right.
I feel the same way. Like, I have gotten to the point where I have so much invested into my tank and the system, my tanks, that it is almost like if I see a whiteout or I see everything dead in my tank, I will be devastated that I killed everything, because I don't care if it was a heater, it was trash, a doser ran, something. It's me. Like, I chose to have these things. If they all die, I killed them all, right? So if everything's dead versus everything I put into it, it would almost be, would that be a relief that I have a break?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and
would you get out of the hobby, or is that the cool reset? I now get to do it again, just different this time.
Do it better.
I think it would be well, I don't know if I can do it better. Like, I have this engineering mind, and I have engineered the shit out of my tank. Like, Ron always talks about how I don't do fucking shit.
But if it crashes,
I think
you didn't. right? Like,
Well, no, I
To be fair,
think
Jim, it was you that kept on saying you didn't do fucking shit.
yeah, but
I just saved his
I don't do shit, but I don't do physical shit, but I plan the motherfucking shit out of stuff.
Yeah, the only
I
reason
have
that you
worked
can
through
not do
every
shit is because you had to plan the fuck out of it.
yeah, so I would probably just take a small break and be like, okay. And what that would turn into is a year-long break from having a physical tank, but a year-long plan of how am I going to build my next one? You know, am I going to do, if I do a bigger tank, what would I put into it or what?
but
So,
even then, like, it almost, in my opinion, like I'm in a similar position. Mind you, I'm not saying I'm on the same level as you because I'm absolutely not. But like my tank is full of coral. I don't have plans on, like, I don't have stocking plans. I'm maintaining water and I'm watching animals grow and I love it. I love my animals. But it's kind of like you where you're like, I don't know what the fuck to do with my tank. I turn the valves every week and I test salinity and make sure everything looks good. But like, if everything did die, you would have a brand new slate to maybe you would do it differently in terms of like what you stocked it with, or like you would do an SPS tank bare bottom, which I know you would never do, but you get what I'm saying. That opportunity presents itself. Whereas like we're currently stagnant, just watching our current animals grow because we have a responsibility to them.
yeah, that's exactly what I would change was that I would like plan not the system, but a new piece of art. You know, how am I going to escape it? What kind of tank? What do I want to show off? How do I want to show it off? And then I'd start sculpting, really.
Yeah.
The
And I'm not saying
system is
that
the
that like
system.
makes it okay to like kill animals and restart tanks, but it's the only way that I like can not lose sleep over it. It's like, well, worst case scenario, I have a clean slate and we can restart this thing.
Jordan,
But
it doesn't matter what way you look at it. Nobody in this hobby is a rational thinker. It's, I mean,
Otherwise, if you are, you wouldn't be here.
yeah, it's you're not. No,
well, what was that talk where you were talking about death by 1,000 stabs? You're just like,
yeah. So yeah, some hobbies just stab you once and you fall over and you die. This one just sticks in a couple of millimeters and just until you slowly start to bleed out over days. Yep, just
Yep.
oh, that's the kidney. So going down the screen, Mr. Dub, what is your biggest fail in reefing?
I'm probably gonna have multiple answers. So the biggest fail I've had in one single instance was a total system failure several years ago. It was about the first large tank I had. It was 75 gallon. It was full of SPS, just beginner acros, digis, things like that, bird's nest. It was going well, right? And it was going too well. And I was chasing the dragon with trying to make sure, like, I got excited by the growth, the quickness of the growth, and then I was like, well, how can I supplement this? And so I started going down the rabbit hole and I was like, oh, okay, so calc. That was my first bite of calc, actually, and it was going well. Um, but and I'm not 100% certain what technically caused the failure or what caused the RTN, but I started looking at like different salts and stuff like that with higher alkalinity and higher, the big three, I guess you could say. And so I got Red Sea Black Bucket, elevated nutrient, not nutrients, Jesus Christ, minerals. And I started doing large water changes semi often, like weekly or something like that, just trying to help elevate that tank and and I think I just caused too much instability by throwing too much in it, and went through an RTN event, and then just kind of went into like slipped into a small depression, took a pause. Like, so I've been in reefing for 12 or 13 years, but like it's been in pauses. So, or in periods of like functioning, then not functioning, then functioning, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the biggest failure I've ever had is just this total system failure. I would say there's like another type of failure, this kind of sitting on the edge, waiting to fall off a cliff if I don't actively do something. And I kind of talked about it in like the biggest wins last week was depression. And if I let that take over, I let the system go into autopilot. It starts to overgrow itself, starts to look ugly. I mean, I don't know. It's just like it's not like a big failure per se, but it's like it's a constant burden. Um, if I don't actively pay attention or actively have my hands on the throttle, um, that's where shit kind of goes to shit in the handbasket. So, um,
So do you find, Mr. Dub, that when you hit these low points in life, that your tanks definitely suffer because of that?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. Like it's interesting how different people have different ways to deal with that lowness. Like you've described, the reason you got into the hobby was using it as a distraction. Um, to be honest, distractions during my low periods are just kind of seldom. Like they get neglected. Um, like I don't have the manpower, the horsepower, and the brain to want to deal with that whenever I'm feeling like shit. Personally, that's just me. So
I think where your threshold of your get up and go, your enthusiasm and your ability to pull yourself out of these funks and things like that. But if your baseline is low, then obviously the lower is lower. I'm quite a highly motivated person when I'm in a good state of mind. So when I
yes,
get lower, it's probably not as low as some other people go, which is very fortunate. But if your baseline is low, then your lows are low. So I
yes,
totally understand that.
yeah.
So
So there's that. Nothing exciting.
do you think your mental health has caused tank problems then?
Yes, I would say so. Not large problems, not total system failure or death or anything like that. Like there's been times with the current system, the 210 gallon system, I guess you could say, about the 80 and the 75 tied together. Um, where right now the 75 is covering in quite a bit of algae, the 80 has quite a bit of bubble algae. Things are starting to grow into each other and starting to have warfare. Um, I'm still doing the status quo, if you would, in having water changes and still doing that at minimum, but I need to get my hands in the tank more often, relatively recently to be able to maintain the just maintain things, I guess, better maintenance. But
So
that's just me. Um,
can I interject,
so
Zach?
yeah,
So I've been, not to say like just on the topic of getting your hands in the tank more, I've been struggling a lot with the new tank because of algae, because of coral growing into each other, and like not having animals to maintain the algae the way I want. So I'm getting in there every week and removing the algae, trying to come up with
yes,
solutions on how to fix this. And I've been kind of bugging Mr. Budnick a lot about herbivores and different style of like fish and crabs and whatnot. And he's like, send me a photo of what you're talking about. And I like send him a photo and he's like, man, all my rocks look like that. Like what you're chasing is an unrealistic expectation of your tank. Like just let it ride it out. It'll go away. I guarantee it. And like I've half listened and half added more herbivores and done things to kind of mitigate it. But I think like what I want my tanks to look like is, well, for like lack of a better example, like Ron's tank behind the side in there. Like no algae, fucking you can see your reflection in the bottom of the tank. Like, you know what I mean? So
Jordan, I have algae.
Could we
I have
I don't
algae.
think
My
so.
tanks mow it down to stubble, but
Right.
it has algae and it has aptasia here and there and little cracks in the rock.
Right.
It is not perfect.
Right. But like
But it's glamorous. It is fucking glamorous.
an
Absolutely, it
opportunity
is.
for another Nakatomi? Some focused algae growth?
Whoa, your mic has turned to shit, Russ.
I swapped headsets so I can cut the grass.
Fuck's sakes.
He did warn me. He warned me before we joined. He was like, cut the grass.
He's
Cut the
all
Do
that
both.
to say
do it both.
is I think it's okay to not have a Instagram glamorous tank all the time, and sometimes your tank just has to like, and I know you know this, but I don't think that you are forgiving enough with yourself about it.
Listen, Jordan, I'll be totally honest
Must be
with you. Jim will rip me and say it's a glamour tank, right? This is the only place I post pictures, and there's 57 members. I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks about my tank. That is what I want to look at. It is literally, it is there. So when I'm sitting here 7 days a week doing my job, that's what I want to see.
I'm not saying that you're doing it for other people, but it's more just like the standard of cleanliness that is your tank is not realistic for most people. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like,
But I'm here 7 days, so this is not realistic. I'll take 5 minutes out of my lunch, scrape the back. I'll take 5 minutes after my lunch, scrape the bottom. The next day, I'll clean my MP40s. I'll leave them soaking in citric acid. You know, I've got 4 to swap out.
Yeah.
Put 4 clean ones in. So it's constant little bits and pieces where if you guys are working 9 till 5:30, Monday till Friday, and the only time you get to maintain your tank is at the weekends, that's a bit of a chore, whereas I just get to do it little and often, and I know how deeply lucky I am to be in the position I am. I've worked like fuck to get to where I am, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, Ron just plays one less plays one less round of Warzone every day and has that 15 minutes to mess with the tank.
I think it's a habit.
you know, this isn't even charged.
Oh, the batteries on the DualSense 5. Yeah, they don't last too long.
No, they don't. They don't. I've not played any computer game on this PS5 since I played with Russ, and I think that was around about Christmas time.
Really?
I played my one at home. I don't get time here. See, I cannot fire up a game of Warzone and then the phone goes, and then you're lying there dead, and your KD is all off. Like I give a fuck. Anyway, moving down the screen. Jason S. What is your... Now, I want to just say for the record, Jason, your microphone quality is fucking dire. So I'm struggling to make you out. But what's your biggest fail in the hobby?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just really, really broken up, Jason.
Let's see if I can adjust it.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I'm sorry. All right, I know if we can do this. I have to just put my setup. Is it better? Can you hear me now?
It's okay. It's okay. Go for
It's
it.
not
Yeah, I just have
worse.
to go a little closer.
Sounds good.
All right. I don't know. Some of my biggest fails is not doing research. And that would be, doing research on fish and compatibility with species. When I was younger, I used to trigger fish with damsels and watch them get chewed up.
Ooh.
But I'm talking back in the 80s. But some of the other ones is like consistent testing. Once I learned a consistent test everything kind of smoothed out.
So would you say that you're talking about back in the 80s here? So you had a damsel, and I assume you bought a trigger, or the other way around. So did your LFS not know what you were buying? Certainly didn't ask you what your current inhabitants were and suggested that that was a bad idea?
No, they just would just, if I wanted it, they would just sell it with no questions asked.
Yeah. I can't imagine how hard it was to run a reef tank in the 80s. I can't even imagine how things have moved in the time I've been in the hobby to where we are now. Is mind blowing. I can't imagine what the 80s was like. Holy shit! Did you have halides?
No, we was using just T5 and metal halide.
Yeah. How was the heat with the halides?
I had fans on each side of the tank to blow wind through the hood.
I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Oh.
Yeah, the summertime run water bottles to keep the temperature down in the 80s.
Yeah, so did you freeze the water and then just float the bottle in the tank?
Yes, yeah. Every day you would one in the morning and one in the evening.
Yeah, I've done that myself when I had the tank at home. Not fun.
Yep. Yeah, for here in the South, it's about 3 to 4 months.
Ooh. Yeah, I must admit, the first time I did that, I read it slightly wrong on the internet and I froze a bottle of water, and I was like, well, how the fuck do I get the water out of the bottle now? It's frozen. So I then cut the bottle and threw the frozen bottle-shaped blob of ice.
Well done, Ron.
It cooled it down a bit.
I've actually run
Now,
into
why is my salinity off now?
Yeah. Why does my tank smell like Jack Daniels? Sorry, Jordan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I've run into a few like people who reefed, in the 80s, 90s and stuff, and they don't anymore because of the failures that they've had, not being able to keep coral and or at least not being able to get them to grow, and then ultimately just it being too much work, and then the metal halide heat and the power that it took to run those tanks. And I cannot fucking imagine, one, not having the technology we have today to run our tanks and not having access to as much information as what we have today. I would not be able to be where I am without those two things. 1,000%. Like,
yeah,
hearing people who reef back then, I'm like, that's a different fucking breed of person, because you were like either doing it just off the cuff, you had no idea what you were doing, but you just did it off feel, or you were like going to the library reading books that were 20 years old, and like, I just can't fucking fathom that.
Yeah, I remember.
I can tell you about,
when you go, Jason, sorry.
I was going to say, I could tell you, getting live rock back in the day, you would get a variety of critters that were gorilla crabs, man shrimp, just a variety of all the bad ones that you didn't want.
I can't even imagine.
One of the biggest things I remember, my dad had a marine tank, and I would say 95% of his equipment, what he used, wasn't to do with the marine hobby. Everyone was just using all this random shit to do stuff. It was from the tropical industry or the cold water industry, and you had an air pump and it turned to shit within 2 or 3 days with salt creep and stuff. It was awful.
Yeah. My dad had those like the filters that went under like the sand. I can't even
sandbed filters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awful pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Oh. So I think the last person to talk about fails, and I don't know if we've got time to write them all down, is Mike.
Ouch.
Wow. That is quite the introduction.
Savage. Yeah, what a dick.
I'm just joking, Mike. I'm just joking, I promise.
I mean, you expect that from me, not from Ron.
I actually do expect it from Ron, so that's pretty much, on par.
Sorry, Mike. On you go. What is your biggest failure in the reefing hobby?
I'm gonna do two here, just because I have two I can talk about. The first is a quick one, and that is not to ever turn your skimmer off when you're medicating a tank, because I have killed at least two tanks having that happen. So even though they say skimmers don't oxygenate the water that much, that's total crock of shit.
Are
And
you
if
saying
you
that
turn your tank off,
you've killed entire systems
Right.
just due to turning your skimmer off?
yep, treating biopsis. Turn your skimmer off for 2 to 3 days. If you have a reasonable fish load, you will have a lot of dead fish. So do not do that. The skimmer will not remove the medication from the water. That does not happen. It does not have the capability of doing so. So absolutely, that has been a huge fail. I've had that happen twice. Once by following the rules, and another time when it happened by accident, the skimmer got turned off and no one was aware of it. Regardless, that is lethal, especially for a high fish load. So
That's
that's
crazy.
one. Yeah. And it's literally on the packaging for medications. Don't do it.
Oh, it actually
The other one
specifies,
is the obvious one, which is what?
it specifies on the packaging now to not turn your skimmer off.
Yeah, some of them actually say to turn your skimmer off, especially for biopsis treatment.
That's what
So,
I've read.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that. And the other one I would say is not quarantining corals. For me, that's obviously a bigger issue than other people. And it's really, really difficult to invest that much in a quarantine system for corals when you're just trying to maintain a reef tank. But that is 100% the biggest fail I've had in my system. Because essentially, there seem to be an enormous number of coral diseases, ones we're discovering just randomly through the hobby. And if you do not take extreme precautions, you're going to end up with one of them at least, if not more. Now, there are certain things that are fairly foolproof. Like if you're doing just softies, then that's pretty uncommon. I mean, you just look for flatworms and things like that. But for SPS and that types, the number of diseases is absolutely insane. I went into looking into the number of copepod parasites like you were talking about. There are probably thousands of species of those.
Mike,
we probably
don't
have
say
them.
that.
We probably have them all throughout the hobby. I have literally dipped corals from like well-known coral salespeople and found them. And that's how my tank got them, is because I trusted a company who I'm like, there's no way they could have a problem. Absolutely did. And so that's something to be aware of. And then you get into other things like bacterial diseases are fairly common, like the Archibacter and SCTLD seem to be now endemic in a lot of places. We get those on corals from shops and online. And then on top of that, you have like the growth anomaly thing that's devastated my system, which I'm going to have to reset, because I don't even know what it is. Science doesn't know what it is. And if I maintain quarantine and actually been aware of what this was ahead of time, I would have chucked the coral and never put it in my system. But instead, it spread through everything in there. And that's the nature of these diseases. And the only way you can prevent it is quarantine. Watch the corals click carefully and don't be afraid to chuck them in the trash.
I'm so grateful for absolutely everything you're doing, and I'm sure I can speak for everybody in this hobby, because a lot of these diseases and what you're actually describing, and albeit we don't have very many subscribers and not many people watch these videos, but if somebody gets something from what you're doing, brilliant, because I'd never heard of parasitic copepods until you guys were discussing it, and then Scotty started talking about it, and then I started saying to myself, hold on, I have corals in my system not growing, slightly losing color, things like that, and then boom, there they were. And I do wonder how widespread all of this is now.
Well, and
They're an
nobody else is
because most
talking
people
about
don't look for 'em.
well, and nobody else is talking about these coral diseases either. I mean, if you Ron, you watch tons of videos, you watch I mean, I think we all watched tons of videos, like a lot of media. Nobody else has talked about this. We're the only ones.
Yeah, it seems to be that all of the videos are positive and mostly sales driven, which is really unfortunate. Which is why I'm so grateful to Mike for taking a bit of a bullet for the hobby and what he's doing and all of that expense. I think it's incredible what you're doing, Mike. And I know it seems like such a negative for you personally right now to be starting to think about getting rid of all those corals and restarting. But what we have all learned through you during this process and the industry, I'm hoping, I think it's been great. So, yeah, I know it's not great for you, but I'm very grateful. I'm
I
very
have a
grateful.
question for you,
Well, I
Mike.
mean, yeah.
So when you say like restart your system, what I think of that is like you're basically just going to throw everything that you have in the bin, clean it all out,
And the
fill
bush.
it with new coral, the
In the
bush.
bushes.
Yeah. Am I correct in saying that?
Essentially, I'm going to have to find a place to put the fish in the
Right.
short term, which I may have to keep a tank alive inside for that purpose. And so I will put the fish in there and then bleach the tank.
Right.
So literally
What
pour a gallon of bleach into it to kill everything in it, live rock, sand, whatever. Everything needs to die and start from a sterile system.
all based on the growth anomaly that you're seeing in your acropora, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just Acropora. I've seen it in other things too.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
And I'm sure you may have already tried this. I'm just curious if this is something you're doing. Have you considered just like removing all of those growth anomaly corals and then waiting to see if it arises again and then continuing to pull those to see if potentially it's coral bound and not like a pelagic type pathogen?
You mean like it's spreading around? So I mean, I have trouble finding things not affected by it at this point
Okay.
in my system, and that's
I
the
guess
problem.
yeah, I
And I
skipped
can't really
that.
tell what is truly not affected versus what is. It demonstrates two different sort of like growth anomalies, probably because of how the genetics of the coral interact with whatever this pathogen is. But essentially, either corals that normally grow as like, you know, plates or corymbos, sort of like bushy sort of looks, will grow in long straight branches that don't branch. Very bizarre, looking like they turn into staghorns. Or corals that normally grow longer branches suddenly produce hundreds of little branches or like hundreds of polyps. And so those are two different things. I don't have an answer to what causes that.
Right.
I've tried antibiotics, did not have an effect. I have tried treating for all sorts of different parasites and other things, did not have an effect. So I have so much of that in the tank now, I just assume everything is affected.
I've got
Basically,
a
fairly heartbreaking.
money making idea for you, Mike. Do you think in the next Corals of the World book you will have under Mike Berry Acropoda chodensis?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I've just checked. The name's not taken. It's yours if you
Yeah,
want.
I would say Acropora polyposis, but anyway.
So I guess my follow-up question is, and I know your main goal is spawning from like frags, like growing them into colonies and then having them spawn, like do the full cycle in your tanks. Have you considered setting up a smaller system, keeping a couple of colonies and seeing either like how the pathogens behave, either by like introducing new coral and seeing if those corals are affected by it or how it's affected by it? Like, are you considering keeping any of those disease corals for your own experiments?
I might do that with one species. The Tarakis seem to be least affected by it for whatever reason. And actually Tarakis, and there's one other species that seem to do reasonably well, but even they're, you know, I can't be sure they're not just showing a different sort of pathology or they're not affected by it, but it's still hosted in them. So I could try that, but I have tried so many different ways of treating these, and nothing has happened. I had had some hope that the rabbit fish I had in the tank were some sort of like intermediate host, because they were very aggressively biting certain corals that seemed to be affected by it, but removing them has not fixed the problem. Now, maybe those corals are still affected by it, but regardless, I haven't gotten rid of it.
I'm not necessarily even thinking from like a treatment or a prevention perspective of keeping them. I'm thinking more of like pathogen behavior observation. Like if you were curious about any of that and how like potentially the disease might impact the coral long term or different coral. But
it seems to have
obviously
impacted
not
their
really.
ability to reproduce.
Right.
Yeah. No, actually, I am very interested in it. I'm just running out of the ability as a hobbyist to do anything with this. If
Right.
I knew somebody at a coral lab who was interested in this, I absolutely would send them specimens to look at. And that would be huge, but I don't know anybody in that sort. And generally emailing, random professors at institutions doesn't tend to work out very well.
It's all about who you know, right?
So exactly. So I would be very interested in doing something of that, but I don't know any way to get there, unfortunately.
And you're
Thanks,
still
but
trying to
like
get
you were
the
saying,
system to spawn. I mean, the idea is that you want it to spawn. So, yeah, you
and unhealthy
so many
corals won't
tangents.
spawn. Yeah. So, I mean, I've literally tried like all sorts of things, and I've learned a lot from keeping the system. But at this point, I think it needs to reset and just start again. As painful as that is, I think that's going to be the best long-term solution. But what I'm going to do before I do any of that is I'm going to document and somehow put together either a presentation or something of that sort, what this looks like, because it needs to be on the internet. People need to see it. Because I have
100%.
looked at people's like posts about corals on a variety of different forums, and I can see it. I know it's out there. There is one vendor that I have mentioned before that seems to be selling corals of that sort and is aware of it. That is not Battle Corals, who is very, aggressively trying to prevent anything of that sort in their system. I actually really had a good talk with Adam multiple times about these sort of things, and he is very OCD about keeping that out of his system. But there's at least one vendor that I got it from that absolutely seems to be still selling corals of that sort. And every time I see a post regarding corals from that vendor, I see evidence of the disease. So,
Wow.
regardless, I mean, that's a topic for another discussion. But the point here is if I quarantined everything and kept it in a system for like 3 to 6 months, I might have caught it. And that's where I went wrong.
Yeah, Adam from Battle Corals actually joined our Discord, and to date, he has said one word, which was cool.
And I called him out on it.
Which is cool. So
I've had a
more.
lot of discussions with him by email, and he's a very nice guy and very OCD about stuff. So I don't think he wanted to have a lot of talks about things of this sort in a public forum.
No, I totally understand that. And I've been on his website a few times, and his corals are absolutely dynamite. Like, I don't know another website like it. Absolutely
he's pretty
stunning.
close. He's pretty close to me, and I was very tempted to try and get in touch with him because I hate like receiving shipped corals, and he's by far one of the best coral aquaculture coral growers in the Midwest, I would say. And since he's only like an hour and 15 minutes from my location, I was like, maybe I'll try and talk to him and go pick up a battle pack so I don't have to deal with shipping like one Saturday. But I never did it. But yeah, his corals, they look fucking awesome.
Let's do
Where
a
would you put him,
goes
Jim?
to Battle Corals live show.
Oh, that'd be great.
That would be awesome. You went to a petrol station, show us all the
gas station
sandwiches. And
convert. Let's
Yeah.
the gas
Build a
station.
Jimstagram.
A quick trip, right? We had a quick trip.
We did. It was amazing. To date, one of my favorite ever talking about. Was that episode 1?
I think so.
I think it was.
I think it
It was
was.
either one or two.
Yeah, it was amazing. Was that a porta potty show?
Was that the porta potty show? I can't get past the porta potty without thinking of you guys.
Me too now.
What,
And we don't
what
have them
about
that
what about
often.
hey, ground control to Major Taters? Ground control to Major Taters. You
He's on
still
his-
there?
He's on his lawnmower.
He pushes, I think.
Oh,
he's-
yeah,
he-
of course.
He checked
He
out.
doesn't-
His headset's no longer connected.
No, he's listening. He's listening.
He
doesn't want to
sounded
turn
like
off
he was in
power.
he sounded like he was in outer space.
He's out there like on his knees rubbing the grass right now.
On that,
Grow
note,
my
lick it.
pretties.
He's licking. He's licking
Grow
it.
my pretties.
He's got to lick harder.
so that's us over the hour and a half. So I think we'll wrap it up here. This has been a really good one. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you everybody for giving up your Sunday morning. And Zach's away. Has to be first. Has to be first. Run! The building's on fire. No, thank you everybody for joining. It's been absolutely great. Remember everybody to check out Pelagic Swimmer on YouTube. And hit us a like and subscribe. I've never said that on a show. Steep learning curve. Steep learning curve. Ooh. Also hit dislike because we don't give a fuck. Anyway, so thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Yeah.
Later, guys.